Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into what is, honestly, the strategic backbone of any great company. It's kind of the secret sauce that separates the organizations that thrive from the ones that just, well, survive. We're talking all about human resource planning.
You've seen this, right? You've got one company that just seems to have its dream team. They're always innovating, always a step ahead. And then you have another company that's just in constant chaos, always hiring, always dealing with skill gaps, and you see their best people walking right out the door. You know that difference? It's not luck, it's a plan.
And that plan has a name. Human Resource Planning, or HRP for short. The best way to think about it, it's like an architect's blueprint for the entire workforce. It's this big picture strategy for 1. Finding the right people, 2. Putting their skills to the best possible use, 3. Helping them grow, and maybe most importantly, making sure they actually stick around. It's all about having the right people with the right skills in the right jobs at exactly the right time.
So, here's our game plan for the next few minutes. We're going to start with what HR planning really is. Then, we'll get into why it's so incredibly important, especially right now. After that, we'll get practical. We'll look at how companies predict the talent they're going to need, how they take stock of the talent they already have, and then, the big one, how they bridge that gap between the two.
All right, let's pour the foundation here. At its heart, HRP is all about pausing, looking ahead, and asking a pretty simple question. Okay, where are we trying to go as a company, and do we have the people to get us there? It's really step one in making sure your people strategy and your business strategy are actually talking to each other.
And this is where it gets really powerful. It's about moving away from constant reactive firefighting to being proactive and strategic. So for instance, instead of getting totally blindsided when a bunch of senior folks retire, you see it coming and you plan for succession years in advance. Or let's say you see some new AI tech coming down the pike. You're not scrambling to hire, you're already figuring out the skills you'll need and training your own people to meet that challenge. It's all about controlling costs, getting the most out of the talent you've got, and really building a workforce that's ready for the future.
And being proactive, well, it has never been more critical. I mean, no business exists in a bubble, right? Every single day, companies are getting hit by these powerful outside forces, which makes this kind of planning not just a nice to have, but an absolute must for survival.
Just look at this list for a second. Technology is changing so fast that a skill that's essential today might be totally obsolete tomorrow. The workforce itself is changing. You've got different demographics with different expectations, then you throw in persistent skill shortages and a whole web of government regulations, and it becomes super clear that the old reactive hire and fire way of doing things is just broken. Systematic planning is the only way to cut through all that noise.
And this quote right here, it just perfectly sums up the prize for getting this right. Good planning isn't just about filling empty seats. It actually creates what the source material calls a reservoir of talent. Think about that. A deep bench of skilled, ready people who can step up and push the company forward no matter what happens next.
So, how does this all work in practice? Well, the process is actually pretty logical, just like an architect's method. First, you figure out your company's big goals. Then, you forecast the demand, the people you'll need. Next, you forecast the supply, the people you'll have. You compare those two to find the gaps, and finally, you build a concrete action plan. Let's walk through those key steps.
Okay, so the whole process kicks off with forecasting demand. This is like the surveying the land part of our blueprint. Before you can build anything, you've got to know what the future terrain looks like. And that means estimating not just how many people you'll need, but also what kind of skills they're going to have for the company to succeed. To do this, planners basically have two different toolkits. On one side, you've got the quantitative stuff, the hard numbers. This is where you use things like trend analysis, looking at past data to project future needs. But on the other side, you have the qualitative approach, which is all about human experience and judgment. This could be getting a panel of experts together and having them debate until they reach a consensus. The smartest plans, though, they don't pick one over the other. They blend that hard data with human wisdom. And we're not just talking theory here. To make a quantitative tool like trend analysis actually work, you need good, solid data. The source material says you should be comparing your productivity ratios for at least the last 5 years to get a forecast that's actually meaningful. It's about
grounding your predictions in what's really been happening. So, once you've looked into the future to forecast your needs, the very next step is to look in the mirror. What talent, what skills, what potential do you already have inside your own company? This is the supply side of the equation, and it's all about taking a really detailed inventory of your current team. And there are some really cool tools for this. A staffing table gives you a basic snapshot of who's where, but then you have something more advanced, like a Markov analysis that actually shows you the flow of your people, like the odds of someone getting promoted, moving sideways, or leaving altogether. But the real gold is in the details. A skill inventory isn't just a name and title. It's a deep dive into every single person's unique skills, certifications, even languages they speak. That, plus a good replacement chart, helps you see not just the team you have today, but the leaders you could have tomorrow.
And this all leads to a really fundamental principle of HRP. You always look inside first. It makes sense, right? It's cheaper, and it's a huge boost for morale. You only really start looking at the external job market when you absolutely have to, either because a specific skill just doesn't exist inside your company, or the cost to train someone would just be way too high.
Okay, so this brings us to the moment of truth. You've looked into the future to forecast your demand, you've looked inward to analyze your supply. Now it's time to put those two pictures side by side and see where they don't quite match up. This is where we draw the final blueprint.
This is what a gap analysis actually looks like. It's a super simple but really powerful comparison. So in this example, the company figures out it's going to need 10 software engineers, but it only has 7. Boom, that's a shortage of 3. At the same time, it needs 5 project managers, but it actually has 6. That's a surplus of 1. Just like that, you have a crystal clear picture of your challenges.
And that gap analysis, it's not just some report that sits in a drawer. It leads directly to a custom-built action plan. So based on what we just saw, that shortage of 3 engineers, that immediately triggers a recruitment plan. But what about that extra project manager? You don't just have to let them go. You could create a redeployment plan. Could their skills be used somewhere else? Or maybe a training plan can get someone ready for a different role. And for everyone else, you need a solid retention plan to make sure you hold on to the great people you already have. See? Every gap points to a specific strategic move.
Now, let's be real for a second. This isn't a magic crystal ball. It's a plan, not a prophecy. Forecasts are never going to be 100% perfect. Sometimes employees will resist changes, and the world is just full of surprises. New tech pops up, markets shift. So effective HRP isn't really about being perfect. It's about being prepared, being flexible, and constantly checking in and tweaking the plan as you go.
And that really brings us to the final question. Human resource planning is what separates a company that architects its future on purpose from one that just reacts to whatever the present throws at it. It's about taking control of your single most valuable asset, your people. So you have to ask yourself, which one is your organization doing?